RMS Queen Mary II is the world's only major passenger ship built and serving as an ocean liner. She is part of the fleet of the famous and historic Cunard line, which was founded 182 years ago in 1840, and is known for operating some of the most famous and noteworthy transatlantic passenger liners in history. Today, Cunard has a fleet of 3 ships, with a 4th on the way, but only one of those ships is an ocean liner, Queen Mary II. The others, Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, and soon Queen Anne, are modified cruise ships which primarily take passengers on pleasure cruises. The reason for this is that technology and economics have largely made crossing oceans by ships obsolete, but there is evidently some demand for this form of travel left, despite the existence of modern airlines. If you are new to the world of maritime and ocean liner history, I encourage you to check out my video on the difference between ocean liners and cruise ships. But in this video, I'll be going over 10 things even ocean liner enthusiasts may not know about the largest ocean liner ever built, Queen Mary II. Number 1. Queen Mary II's upper superstructure is fundamentally different from that of her predecessor. Like her hull, Queen Mary II's superstructure is made out of steel, albeit thinner steel. This differs from her predecessor, Queen Elizabeth II, of 1969, whose superstructure is made out of aluminum to help reduce weight near the top of the ship and thus improve stability by lowering the center of gravity. So why did Stephen Payne, Queen Mary II's primary architect, decide to make her superstructure out of steel instead of aluminum, despite the impact to stability? Because, as was discovered on Queen Elizabeth II, an aluminum superstructure would have a shorter life expectancy. After 30 years, QE2's superstructure was weakening and required difficult and expensive repairs. So, instead of designing Queen Mary II for a 30-year career, and later attempting to extend that career by making costly repairs, Payne decided to pay the cost up front and give Queen Mary II a fully steel superstructure. Of course, this necessitated consideration elsewhere in the design to produce a stable ship, but the end result was a ship up to the task of a long career at sea. Number 2. Queen Mary II uses illusions to adhere to tradition. A modern ocean liner has to be very buttoned up to meet modern safety concerns while transiting the Atlantic in the harshest conditions. This is why her lifeboats and glass balconies are so high out of the water compared with a cruise ship. It is also why she does not have an open forward superstructure like so many ocean liners of yesteryear. Even her namesake, Queen Mary, had open weather decks at the forward end of her superstructure for passengers to enjoy and look out over the bow. Aside from an open but very protected deck way up top underneath the bridge, the superstructure is enclosed for safety purposes. But Queen Mary II exudes a look closer to that of her namesake Queen Mary than, say, SS France of 1960, by employing broad black bands of paint where there might have been an exposed deck. The black bands hide the darkened windows that are actually there. And while this design element probably isn't fooling anyone, and so I hesitate to call it an illusion per se, it does give off a pleasing aesthetic that harkens back to the golden age of ocean liner travel. You'll notice that the same is true of QM2's bridge. A similar black band wraps around the bridge where their windows are, giving the feel of a ship with an open bridge. Number 3. Speaking of the bridge, have you noticed something different about it? Most modern cruise ships, and I would go as far as to say virtually all of them, have some kind of public passenger space located above the bridge. It might be a bar, a lounge, a restaurant, anything really. But they all have something above the bridge because that location offers unparalleled views for passengers. But on Queen Mary II, there is nothing above the bridge other than some well-disguised equipment. And the reason for this is simple but interesting. Tradition. Historically, there would not have been public space above the bridge. In fact, on many ships, passengers could not get anywhere near the bridge, let alone on top of it, without going out of bounds. Furthermore, the bridge being the visual pinnacle of the ship signifies the ship's seriousness as an ocean liner. The first priority of the ship is safe and efficient navigation across the ocean, and everything else is secondary to that mission. Also, it just looks better not to have a deckhouse stacked on top of the bridge, especially on a ship like Queen Mary II, which already towers over nearly everything around it. Number 4. Queen Mary II does not have a traditional engine room. This one is not unique to Queen Mary II, but it is noteworthy for an ocean liner. Queen Mary 2 is propelled by 4 propellers attached to pods mounted underneath the hull, and each of these pods encapsulates its own electric motor. This differs substantially from a traditional arrangement, where the propellers would be driven by a shaft connected directly to the engines within the ship. On Queen Mary 2, the electric motors within the pod drive the propellers. But where exactly does this electricity come from? It is supplied by 4 diesel generators within the ship, which are located in a similar location to where the traditional engine room might be located. However, the precise location of this space was more flexible during the design process, since the generators did not need to be connected to propeller shafts to directly power the propellers. Number 5. Some of the ship's power is produced by gas turbines. In addition to the diesel generators deep within the ship's hull, Queen Mary 2 is partially powered by gas turbines. These gas turbines, though, are located very high in the ship despite being very heavy. The reason for this is that the gas turbines require a constant and large supply of airflow. If the turbines were located low in the ship, below the waterline alongside the diesel generators, uptakes would need to connect the turbines to the outside air ascending through every passenger deck, which would take up valuable space and limit the design of the ship's passenger areas. So the turbines were placed underneath the aerodynamic air scoop near the funnel. But the turbines are very loud, so they had to be installed within a soundproof compartment so that walking around Queen Mary 2's deck wouldn't be comparable to walking around the tarmac at an airport. Luckily, the impact of having the heavy turbines high up on the ship was offset by the fact that the fuel used by the turbines is substantially lighter than the diesel used by the generators below. The turbines help to produce power to the ship's pods, as well as supply electricity for lighting, appliances, and everything else on board. Number 6. Queen Mary 2's final days as a ship under construction were marred by tragedy. We'll come back to the technical aspects of Queen Mary 2 in a few minutes, but let's talk about something else for a moment. Following her sea trials, Queen Mary 2 returned to St. Nazaire where she was built to continue the fitting out process. On November 15th, the families of the shipyard workers were welcome to tour the mighty ship their husbands, wives, sons, and daughters had been helping to build. A special gangway was put in place to allow the visitors to board the ship via Deck 2. Suddenly, that gangway collapsed, sending 40 people into freefall toward the dry dock floor. In the end, 16 lives were lost and 24 more were seriously injured. The president of France at the time, Jacques Chirac, was scheduled to tour Queen Mary 2 that same day, but postponed his visit to the following day as a mark of respect and mourning for the lives lost. The following Monday, the next work day for the yard workers, was given off as well. But Queen Mary 2 had to continue toward her entry into service. The christening ceremony was set for January 8th, and she was to be christened by none other than Queen Elizabeth II, who had christened 17 ships before Queen Mary 2, but only 5 passenger ships. It is an honor not given to many ships, but one which helped secure QM2's place as a world-renowned ship for decades to come. Number 7. She's British in spirit and branding only. Cunard is among Britain's most storied institutions, but the company is no longer purely British. In fact, even Queen Mary 2 herself is British only in the sense that she adheres to Cunard line tradition and fully embraces her British heritage. She was built in St. Nazaire, France, by French shipbuilder Chantier L'Atlantique, which has built many ocean liners throughout its history, but none for Cunard until QM2. Today, Cunard itself is arguably no longer a British company, at least not purely so, as it is owned by the Carnival Corporation and PLC. It is often said that Carnival Corp is an American company, but the reality is more complicated than that. I'm not going to bore you with the corporate structure of a multinational corporation, but suffice it to say that it is not strictly British, and neither is Cunard. Queen Mary 2 can't claim an entirely British crew either, as she is manned by a very diverse crew from all over the world. Many of her officers are British, though. Also, while she was once registered to Southampton, England, and flew the iconic Red Ensign from her stern, this is no longer the case. In 2011, Cunard changed the registry of all its ships to Hamilton, Bermuda. Yes, Bermuda is a British overseas territory to this day, but it is not British in the sense that, well, Britain is, and it is self-governed. Publicly, the reason for this change was so that Cunard captains would be able to perform weddings at sea, but there may have been more factors. All this is to say that Queen Mary II, while fully embracing her British heritage, is not fully British by any definition. The singular most British thing about her might be that her design was led by the British naval architect Stephen Payne. Number 8. Queen Mary II is pulled, not pushed, through the water. The propellers on Queen Mary II are composed of 4 propeller blades each, attached to a central propeller boss. In other words, the blades are separate units which allow for easier and cheaper replacement. But these propellers are designed to pull Queen Mary II through the water rather than push her as might be assumed. The reason for this is to improve efficiency by allowing the after set of propellers to interact with undisturbed water. The ship's forward 2 propellers are further outboard, but not enough to avoid sending dirty water into the path of the 2 after propellers if they were to push the water as propellers traditionally do. Dirty water refers to water which has been churned, which is not conducive to efficiency when in the way of a second set of propellers. So the system was designed to pull the ship, allowing all 4 propellers to interact with clean water, if you will. This arrangement also helps to mitigate vibration issues. Number 9. Crew can enter the Rolls-Royce Mermaid pods from within the ship. Since the pods contain individual electric motors, engineers need to be able to access them. In order for the motors to be accessed without removing the entire pod, an access ladder is built into the vertical control column which connects the pod to the ship. While I was not able to find any photographs of the inside of the pods, they are apparently extremely tight quarters, despite their large size, because the motors themselves are also quite large. One would have to be very agile to maneuver inside the pod, let alone perform complicated maintenance and repairs on them. You also couldn't be claustrophobic like I am. I doubt I could get myself to even descend the ladder into the pod before going into an irrational panic attack. Access to the inside of the pod, though, is prohibited while the ship is at sea. You can imagine how dangerous it would be to go into the pod while the ship was in the middle of the harsh Atlantic. Number 10. I have never been aboard Queen Mary II or even seen her in person, but I plan to. I have preliminary plans to make a transatlantic crossing in 2023, and I want to make a video for my audience while I'm on board. What type of video would you like to see from me from my time on board Queen Mary II? Ideas I'm considering include an in-depth tour of my favorite spaces on board, a review of the voyage and Cunard experience, or another video like the one I'm doing right now, except I could actually show you on camera what I'm referring to. Or I can make a simple travel log of our trip. I'll be traveling with my significant other, so it wouldn't be just me talking to a camera. Let me know what you would like to see for that future video in the comments. I'm open to new ideas and I have plenty of time to decide because our trip is still a ways off, unfortunately. Thank you for watching another Great Big Move video. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a video.